what are we doing in the black community? The number one consumer of a Mercedes-Benz
is us.
Us. The number one consumer of a Gucci and a Louis Vuitton, us. And they don't even advertise. Why is it that in the black community, we are always the number one consumer, but we're not the number one creators?
So you just said it, the fact that there's consumers and creators. For so long, we assume success based on consumption.
Welcome to Closing the Gap, the truth about black wealth. Of course, I'm your host, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton, and I have Reverend Eddie Richardson here with me as a co-host. We're thankful and blessed to be here. This is a brand new episode, a brand new show we're bringing here to you on V94.9 WATV radio. We're excited. I know we're blessed and truly highly favored to be before you. And, we're thankful to have this opportunity because, our goal and our dream and my passion is teaching my community how to create generational wealth. And I'm always looking for opportunities to do that. So I'm thankful to Mr. Chris Coleman and the whole staff and team over at V94.9 for allowing us to collaborate together and bring forth a new opportunity with new information and new insight into helping, of course, to upbuild and uplift, our community and take things to another level, across the globe. So we have, high hopes and big dreams, and we know they do together. And of course, you can still catch us on first Monday in every month with Chris Coleman on the Think Tank and Mondays. Of course, I'll be there, excited to share more financial wisdom and knowledge with you to continue to help you throughout your day, and you're helping you with your financial decision making as we grow together. So first off, we want to come here to you. We want to have the conversation about black wealth, and where are we today, and where are we going. But sometimes, like I say, before you can know where you're going, you got to understand where you're being. So we're going to do a lot of teaching, bring a lot of information to you. We're going to touch on a lot of different topics, and we want to be a resource for you. So we want you to tune in every Saturday, 8 a.m. On V94.9 WATV, and we're gonna jump right into it, man. We're gonna the goal is closing the gap. The goal is to have real conversations about our community to help close the gap that exists for African Americans here in the United States of America. So first and foremost, I know most people are asking, who is Wilbert Hamilton? Why should I listen to him? Well, I'm gonna let you know who Wilbert Hamilton is for a minute. I'll give you a little bit of background. So I'm actually a Birmingham native. I was actually born here in Birmingham, Alabama. My father was a high school coach here. Actually coached at West End and Jackson Nolan, years ago. And then he returned home to Montgomery, Alabama, where I was actually raised. And upon graduating high school, actually, I came back to Birmingham. And played football at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, UAB. Got my degree in economics and finance at UAB. And lo and behold, my wife was across the way and in school at Sanford here in Birmingham, Alabama. So I came, I went, I came back again, and the Lord has brought us home here, and Birmingham is now home to me and my wife and my three sons that are here as well. So, Birmingham is that home away from home that just kind of never left. So thankful and blessed to be, here and, able to give information to a community that's giving me so much and giving me opportunities and my family opportunities to grow and develop and educate ourselves. So, how I got to this space, I'm a financial advisor by trade. I own Hamilton Wealth Advisors, a wealth management firm, of course, here locally in Birmingham, Alabama area. And God gave me a vision and passion. Years ago, luckily enough, when I was playing football at UAB, I had a vision and passion to learn finance and learn about money because I wanted to help myself. I didn't have no plans on being on the radio, helping other people and talking about finance and wealth management. But, God gave me a dream and a vision. He said, well, you know what? My people perish through the lack of knowledge. And I want you to teach your community how to create generational wealth. And that's led me on a path and a journey that's brought me here today. And I'm thankful and grateful that God is using me, the way he has and continues to use me. And I want to, my goal is to, touch people I never come into contact with. And lo and behold, radio might be the best place to do that. It's allowing me to be before you to share some information, some knowledge, and some wisdom that can hopefully benefit you and your family for years and years to come. Outside of that, I've been in business going on about 20 years now. Own, like I say, Hamilton Wealth Advisors. You can catch us on the web, on YouTube. You can catch us on Instagram and Facebook at Hamilton Wealth Advisors, HamiltonWealthADV.com for more information to look us up. We're actually one of the few black-owned wealth management firms, in the United States of America. We were actually the first registered investment advisory firm with the State Securities Commission here in the state of Alabama. So we've had a little bit of success along the way. God has been with us, and we want to keep it with us to take us, further and further. So, I'm, like I said, that financial advisor by trade, but it's all about, for me, about helping people, about serving people. And one of the greatest lessons, I tell people I learned is that, my father taught me that people don't want to know how much you know till they find out how much you care. And I truly believe in helping and serving people in a way, but and with a passion, and utilize the gifts that God gave me. God gave me a passion and a vision and a skill set that helps me be able to see financial situations and circumstances that are very complex in a very simplistic way. I also believe He's given me the gift of being able to interpret that information and also pass it along in a very simplistic way as well, because our community has not received a lot of information. A lot of information has been withheld from us on purpose, and unfortunately, they've also said that you want to keep something away from somebody to put it in the book, and we're not reading a lot. So, luckily, I read just enough to receive some of that information to hopefully be able to pass it back to you. But I definitely want to just kind of share who I am and why it's important, and what I'm all about with you, so you know who you're talking to, because that's going to be really important as we go along, and I kind of educate you more on who you're listening to when when you're getting your financial information, and how to decipher between good and bad information. And one thing I always tell people is Google don't fact check, so you got to know your sources, and we want to be and we are a credible source for you, helping to receive more and more information. But this thing ain't just about me, it's about us.
That's right.
So I definitely want to introduce you to Mr. Reverend Eddie Richardson, here, my co-host with me, and of course, he's going to tell you a lot more about himself.
Thank you, Wilbert. Like Wilbert said, my name is Reverend Eddie C. Richardson. I am born and raised in Linden, Alabama, down in Black Belt. Came up to Birmingham, Alabama, attended Miles College. Second generation student of Miles College. My father and my mother both attended there as well. Received my degree in language arts education. But when I came to Birmingham, I was already a barber. I was already cutting hair. And so right before I graduated, began to work in a barbershop. And now I own my own barbershop on Green Springs Highway, and that's Blueprint Barbers and Styles. And it's through cutting hair that I was able to meet Wilbert while he was in college. And since then, we have continued to grow our relationship together. I also, during that process of being in the barbershop and owning the barbershop, felt the urge of God to begin to preach His gospel. And as a result of that, I began to become a pastor in 2012, and have been pastoring since then. And as a result of that, God continued to keep this connection with Wilbert and I together, and He decided to bring me on as a co-host on the show, and for that, I'm eternally grateful. And my responsibility, I would say, in this is to always bring the godly knowledge and wisdom into the balance of closing the wealth gap in our community. Not saying that Wilbert can't do it himself, but he felt the need to bring me on to give some spiritual insight, spiritual wisdom, and we balance that out with each other. Because that's the same type of conversation that we would have even in the barbershop. We would talk about sports and all those things, but most of all, I always talk to people about what do they do, right? And we like to look at what you do through a godly lens. Why did God give you the gift that you have? And how are you operating in that gift? And what we want to do through this show is to help the community get an understanding of their wealth and how God desires for them to utilize their wealth. Or why do you have a lack of wealth? What is the issue in that? And so we want you to look at that from a spiritual perspective.
Absolutely. I'm definitely always blessed and highly favored to be before this wonderful man of God here, and he's a pastor to me as well. I can say, growing up, my father's best friend was his barber, and I never understood that until the older you get in life, and you realize that, man, you probably talk to your barber more intimately than you probably talk to anybody else. But when that man can share wisdom and knowledge with you, it makes it, that relationship that much more valuable. Because we're all searching for that, I believe. And I'm definitely always looking for, people who can pour into me and be a blessing to me, because I truly believe we're all blessed to be a blessing. And, I'm always thankful and grateful. And like I said, you never know what relationships in life are going to bring you, where they're going to take you. But the most valuable thing I think you can tell a man or tell anyone, man or woman, is that you see God in them. For me, that's how I value relationships. That's how I value people. At the end of the day, yes, closing the gap is about, helping to close the wealth gap, in our community and build that up. But, I think foundationally, like what Brother Richardson was speaking of, and, making sure we got God in it, and is understanding that is, if we get the house right, everything else will take care of itself. So if we're not right with Christ, if we're not right, we can't expect to be right in our finances, in our relationships, and those things if we haven't identified and we're not utilizing God to the maximum capabilities. I mean, we all have to be right with him first and foremost. So for me, the greatest value in any man is the saying that you can see God in him. And that's definitely something that I'm blessed to be able to say. I can see in the brother, next to me here. And that's why I'm so blessed and thankful to have him here, on this show. And like I said, we're going to keep it going and jump right into it, man. And, I'm always curious to hear other people's, take on this, because me being a financial advisor, I deal with money all day, every day. It's what I do for a living. I'm always talking to people about how to plan for retirement, how to save for their kids' college education, how to do estate planning, and do they have enough life insurance? What type of life insurance should they get? And, we're going to touch on all those different things, throughout the course of the show. But, the first question I think we want to identify is, what is real wealth? And understand, I think everybody has a different definition of what wealth is. And that's okay. You have to identify what your version of wealth is. To some vision, some people, we hear people say, health is wealth. And I agree with that. Yeah. I agree. I mean, it don't make sense, like I say, to have, $100 million, but you don't have your health to utilize it. What good is to gain the man, to gain the world, but lose his soul? I mean, at the same time. So, but let's not be mistaken. Life costs. Yeah. Ain't nothing free out here no more, So definitely understanding the value of money, understanding and what role wealth plays. And, I used to do a lot of speaking engagements, and I still do. But I had a speaking engagement one time, and somebody asked me a question. Young lady, I was speaking at Auburn University, actually. She said, who are some wealthy African Americans? And I told her we don't have any. And this was probably around 2012. And, she got real upset with me. She said, well, my uncle and my granddaddy, they got a bunch of money. And, what about Oprah? And what about, Michael Jordan and all these people? I said, well, those are very rich individuals. And I said, I don't know your grandfather and your uncle. I said, well, they can be very well off as well. But to me, wealth transcends generations. We have not had generational wealth in our community because, honestly, we hadn't had enough time to garner, generate, and pass on generational wealth. So can Oprah, can Tyler Perry, can Michael Jordan, can LeBron James, can these people become wealthy? Absolutely. Yes. But until that wealth transcends the next generation, I don't see wealth. I see extremely rich African Americans. Oprah didn't have any kids that I'm aware of. So who is her wealth going to go to in the next generation? It's probably going to be spread out to a lot of individuals and charities and institutions. That's a great, but that doesn't transcend her next generation. There's no lineage for that money to pass down with her last name. Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is, what we can say, arguably the greatest basketball player ever, correct? And that's a debate that, we can have another day. But, he has been extremely successful none the least. Michael Jordan's going through a divorce. He's had good and bad, business situations. He lost $400 million in his previous divorce. That took him from being a billionaire to not being a billionaire. Who knows what's going to happen to any of us in the future? He has multiple kids. He has obviously a new wife and new relationship and even younger kids now. So, how that wealth and what transcends the next generation, because there could be bad business dealings and things that could happen that affect how that wealth goes to the next generation. So we always, we hope to see these things, and I believe we will. But there are certain things that have to happen before we see what I call wealth. Now, that's my definition, and that just happened to be my definition because obviously I work in the space as a financial advisor. I work with professional athletes and institutions, so I've seen money come and go for a lot of different individuals, so I'm always careful not to put the cart before the horse. I do believe that we're getting to a place where we will start to see some wealthy African Americans. I think we're getting better with money. I think opportunities for the top 1% have gotten better, but as a whole, I don't think real wealth is imminent and persistent within our community. And that's why I love this show, because we're gonna keep diving into that more and more. But I'm always curious, Brother Richardson, what is real wealth to you?
Yeah. So to that end, I like what you said about how different persons, your examples of Oprah Winfrey and Michael Jordan, just to name those two, building wealth and being able to pass it along to the generations. So just the basic definition of wealth looks at an accumulation of economic resources, an accumulation of valuable things, goods that can be passed down from generation to generation. And to what you said, we have not been able to do that based on this system that we live in the United States has thwarted our access to be able to build wealth. Hence the name of this show, Closing the Gap, because we want to expose those things and so that we can understand that, hey, we have some work to do. And the lack thereof of wealth sometimes is not a fault of our own.
Absolutely.
But some of it is just because of where we are and the knowledge that we lack.
Absolutely.
So wealth, I would say, for me, is what has God given us access to do? What has God allowed us to do? Everybody can be wealthy, like you said. Health is wealth. Money is wealth. But we want to definitely talk about money. We want to definitely talk about resources. We want to definitely talk about that accumulation, because that is what will allow us to close the gap. That is what will allow us to set up the next generation, our kids and our community, to be better than what we were. Right? So when we pass down knowledge, we need to pass down money, and we need to acquire more knowledge, and we need to acquire more money. But first of all, you got to know where it comes from. Where all things, for me, come from God. Like, it is God who has given us the power to get wealth. It is God who allows us to earn. It is God who gives us the gifts and the talents that we have and that we are to utilize to bring God glory. And so when we look at wealth, we want to look at what has God endowed me with, and with what God has endowed me with, how am I using that, number one, to bring God glory and to pass down to the next generation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, that's oh so important, and I think it's important for everyone to identify, their goals, dreams, and aspirations. And it's okay for them to be different, but I think it's not okay for us not to have them. I think a lot of who we are and who we become is predicated on our environment and who we're around. And that's why it's important, for people that's under the sound of our voices to take heed to this conversation and to, for me, be the change that they want to see. Like I said, we talk about not having that wealth. The first thing you can do is, for me, is always do a self-check. Me look in the mirror and see, what am I doing to be better? What am I doing to put my kids in a better situation? And I think all too often in our community, we've had a number of people that have had bad circumstances, some of them by their own choices, and some of them just by the way the cards were dealt to them, and not having that leg up. And I think I've met with too many people in my career as being a financial advisor that said, you know what, I want my kids to struggle like me. I don't want them to go through the same thing that I had to go through. I'm not leaving my kids a bunch of money. My question is always why. Now, why would you want your kids to go through the same thing that you went through? I've come to the understanding of, what, my kids should not go through the same things that I went through. There are going to be things that they're going to have to go through that are going to be different from mine. My job is to put them in position to be as successful as possible, not to solve all their problems, because life is showing us on. We all going to have our own problems. God ain't taking problems away no time soon. He needs problems to be there because he needs to see how you handle those problems, how exactly the strength is in the test. Like I say, the gift is in the journey, not the destination. So, I think the adults in the room have to start taking some accountability into their actions and wanting to see, because like I said, a righteous man leaves inheritance to his children. That was a message that was given to me that by my pastor at the time when I was in Montgomery, Alabama, when I first started working, and I told him when I had entered into financial services. He said, you know, when I told him, I said, I'm a financial advisor now, I'm going into that realm, that was the first words out of his mouth. He said, a righteous man leaves inheritance to his children's children. And that stuck with me. And at that time, my relationship with the Lord wasn't as strong as it is now. I was blessed to have one because I was raised in the church, and I truly believe we train up a child in the way that he should go. And when he is old, he would not depart from it. And I'm blessed and I'm highly favored that I've been able to follow and listen and take heed to that. And that has brought me where we are today.
Yeah.
See you next time. Welcome back to Closing the Gap, the truth about black wealth here on V94.9 WATV. We're going to keep the conversation rolling, man, and we're going to jump right back into it and talking to you about wealth. You know, as Chris Coleman says, we're here to talk about that money. You know, we talk about that money. So we're going to jump back into it and, you know, helping to, you know, better understand and teach our community, you know, what does Closing the Gap mean? What is it really all about? What is money? What is wealth really all about? And how can we, you know, attain it? But also maintain it, because like I say, it doesn't do you any good to get something if you can't, you know, keep it. I always say it ain't how much money you make, it's how much money you keep at the end of the day, and your habits will determine your destination. That's a bar for you. You can take that, which is free of charge for right now. So, you know, we're gonna get back into, man, just talking about, you know, where we are from a community standpoint, our vision on wealth. You know, what does wealth mean to us? You know, helping you identify what it means to you. Is it freedom? Is it flexibility? Is it health? Is it financial? For me, it's all of the above. You know, all those things encompass, you know, real wealth. And, you know, at the end of that, center of that, making sure that, of course, you got, you know, God at the center, whoever your God is, whoever you look to, you know, making sure that he or she is in it. You know, for me, it's Jesus Christ. For you, you know, that's the personal conversation. But jumping back into it, man, you know, the leading cause of our continued wealth gap would be what?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I would first say lack of knowledge. As scripture says in Hosea, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. Now, that lack of knowledge is not to disparage any person personally and say that, hey, you don't have what you could have because you haven't taken the time to learn it.
Yep.
While some of that is true, that we do need to take responsibility for ourselves and say, hey, I need to strive to educate myself on how can I get ahead? How can I establish wealth? How can I set myself and my family up and the generations thereafter? Which is why we're here on this show, is to help every listener to achieve that. But also, we do recognize that there are certain things, certain roadblocks that have been placed in our way over the years. Right? There's it's like in Birmingham, there was a financial company that just settled a lawsuit for modern day redlining when it comes to giving home loans. You know, so that's an issue. Right? That's not an issue of the person that applied for the loan.
Absolutely.
But that's the issue for the company that decided that, hey, because you put on your application that you're black and you had a specific zip code that you were living in, we're not going to give you a loan for the home. And within our communities also, when we talk about homes, because homes and property are some of the biggest drivers of wealth, is real estate ownership. And we've talked about before about Big Mama's house.
Absolutely.
You know, and we see in some of our neighborhoods dilapidated homes that different persons have not come back to claim. Well, I believe that they would have come back to claim those homes if they had known that there was equity there. That no matter how bad the home looks, that I should be able to go to the bank with the deed to this home and say, hey, I want to renovate my house, and be able to get a loan based off the equity. But in our neighborhoods, the banks don't give us the same rate of equity
Absolutely.
per square footage for other zip codes. So these are the types of things, different inequalities that we have to fight, discriminations that we have to fight, housing market discriminations, and just various systematic inequalities and just various policies that have negatively affected our community.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, it's crazy because, you know, as an advisor, I'm always looking at different studies and research that's been put out by a number of different financial institutions. And, you know, one of the things I came across early on was that the two biggest drivers of wealth in the United States of America were marriage and home ownership. Is when, you know, you got two incomes and not one. And when you own real estate, and of course that appreciation and value, that natural growth that takes place, because for most people, their home is their greatest asset.
That's right.
But like you said, because of redlining and of course, you know, certain banking regulations or lack thereof, that's caused us not to have access to that equity and understand that there's equity and value in it. And, you know, it's not, you know, it is by design, unfortunately, that, you know, the value in our neighborhoods and our community as a whole has never really shown itself, and they've never really shown us that they believe is value in our neighborhoods until they pushed all of us out of our neighborhoods, and then they come back and then purchase the neighborhood. So, you know, they've done a good job of tricking us, to say the least, to thinking that we don't have value, but we do. You know, for me, one of the greatest causes, you know, that leads to our lack thereof, and it becomes ironic because people ask me all the time, you know, what is the trick? Because being a financial advisor, what investment can I do? Is it insurance? Is it, and what kind of stock, bond, mutual fund? Is it private equity? What kind of investment can I put my money in to help close the wealth gap? And I'm like, man, at the end of the day, it comes back down to trust. You know, for me, trust is the biggest factor in attaining, growing, and achieving wealth. Because if you don't have trust, you would not have success in any type of relationship. That relationship with your spouse, the relationship with your money, your relationship on your job and your career. There has to be a level of trust there in order to have real sustainable success. And if we look at our community, one thing that we lack, in my opinion, probably more than anything, is a lack of trust. We don't trust each other. We don't trust other communities completely. We, unfortunately, in certain situations when it comes to wealth, trust them more than we trust our own, in a lot of ways. And a lot of it is because, you know, we've seen them in positions of power. We don't see we're not used to walking in the bank and seeing you know, ourselves as that branch manager. We're not used to seeing ourselves as that financial advisor, ourselves as that CEO, ourselves as that lead CPA. Is, you know, we haven't seen us in positions enough, which is why you look at some communities around the country and you wonder why certain areas of African Americans are doing better than others, is because they have actually a greater level of trust. If you look at Atlanta, Georgia, if you at least look at, you know, Chicago or Detroit or Washington, D.C., you know, places where you had a large population of African Americans, well, because of the population size there, they held higher positions in the community and professionally. So they were able to parlay those relationships and that trust into certain contracts and business opportunities that developed and helped them to get a head start, so to speak. If you look at Atlanta and what turned Atlanta into Atlanta, we had of course, they have the Mayor Maynard Jackson, and then of course you had the Atlanta airport that goes there, and there you had the mandates where a certain percentage of those contracts had to go to African Americans, and they were able to take that money and those opportunities and pass it on to other brothers and sisters that look like them. And all of a sudden, you have an Atlanta life insurance company. You have a Herndon Capital, which is was a large investment firm, you know, based out of Atlanta. So, own insurance company, own investment firm. They have major to this day, H.J. Russell Incorporation, one of the largest commercial you know, project managers and construction companies, you know, in the United States that does business worldwide. You have a lot of different people that have been highly successful. And that happened because they had one ingredient in common. They trusted each other. And until we start to generate that trust and give ourselves opportunities where we can help and move forward, there's always going to be a gap. And we understand that there's been, a lot of it has been by design, and we haven't been afforded certain opportunities. Because I always say, you can only be as good as your opportunity. I can be the best financial advisor in the world, but if nobody gives me an opportunity to show them how good I am and how much I can benefit and be of value to them, it doesn't matter. But that's why it's important for me to always share with my community that we have to give each other opportunities, because the more opportunities that I'm blessed with, the more opportunities I can bless somebody else with. And we're not in position to bless each other enough because we rarely give each other an opportunity. We're quick to tear each other down, but slow to build each other up. I believe that we have to start to utilize, what we do have. What we have always had is each other. But until we really lean on each other, and that's what we come out of. You look at, of course, the Birmingham Civil Rights Movement, and what did we do at that time? We leaned on each other. Where somewhere along the lines, we stopped leaning on each other. And we stopped trusting each other the same way. And we started to go our different ways. Now, there's a number of reasons for that. And, and we definitely going to dive into those on this show because, integration is one of those things that, good or bad, depending on how you look at it, may have affected us. And it did affect us. Right. There was a time when in our communities, when you talk about that greater value that we had everything together. Yeah. We had our own grocery stores, our own hospital, our own bus stations, our own, laundromats, our own tailors, our own movie theater. We had our own everything. And when we had everything in-house and in our community, the value in our community was greater because we believed in it. It didn't matter what anybody else saw in our community. It's what we trusted and what we saw in each other. So I think we have to get back to that to a certain extent. We definitely have to incorporate that trust into it and helping to lead us in helping close the wealth gap.
Yeah. So rebuilding that trust in one another. When I listen to you say that, what I think about is what is that a person's foundation, right? What is your personal foundation? And when I say personal foundation, what is your ethic that you live by? What is the moral that you live by, right? Everybody has a basis that they live by, a basic set of rules and guidelines that they guide their daily lives. And what I strive to do as a preacher and pastor is to help people read the Word of God and get that basic and that foundation there. And I think being able to have faith in a God that you do not see will allow you to have faith and trust in your fellow brothers and sisters that you see, that you are in your neighborhood with. And then now, as a result of that, you're able to trust the person that you see because you have placed your ultimate trust in the one that you do not see, in the one that you understand controls and guides and leads everything about you, the one that has given you knowledge and wisdom and understanding, and that has placed you in a particular community of people so that you can assist them in becoming who they are designed to be. And then they can also assist you in becoming who you are designed to be. This is where we truly close the gap, right? Because that's a gap. Trust is a major gap. And that's what even happens in relationships. As you stated earlier, one of the biggest places of wealth is in marriages, as you said, right? Marriage and home ownership. And many times we're not able to keep the marriage together because there's a lack of trust between the husband and the wife.
Absolutely.
And then that lack of trust then causes us to be disconnected personally. Then that disconnection personally disconnects our wealth.
Absolutely.
And then that disconnects our ability to build wealth, to build our wealth and gain more, because now we're separate.
Absolutely.
I don't trust the person that I sleep with on a daily or nightly basis. I don't trust the people that I work with at my job. I don't trust my barber. I don't trust a African American wealth advisor with my finances, right? Which also goes into some of the issues that hindered us with integration, where when you only had to trust and depend on your own people, you didn't have an option to not trust each other.
Absolutely.
Even if somebody did you wrong within your community, you had to figure out a way to resolve that issue. But now I have the option to eliminate that relationship, and I can just take my money to a totally different community.
Absolutely.
Now, I don't have to work out that relationship anymore because I have another option. And I do think that within that integration, to what you said, where there are some things that were harmful in it, I think that's one of the things that did harm us, was that we began to believe that ice over here was colder than ice over here.
Absolutely.
You know, that this water fountain had better water than that water fountain, that this bank was able to provide more than the bank that I had, that the groceries in this store were better than the groceries in the store in my neighborhood.
Absolutely.
So now I don't trust. I don't trust my own. And as a result, we don't trust ourselves personally.
Correct.
That now I don't even trust myself, that I have the ability to learn what I need to learn to build wealth in my community. I don't believe that that a person should even trust me with the job that I do, unless I have somebody else above me that gives me a cosign.
Absolutely. You know, it's ironic that, you know, when we talk about wealth and, you know, closing the gap and what has transpired over the last, I mean, honestly, 400 years and where our community is, there are a number of studies that have been done. And, you know, one of the most, you know, eye-popping ones is that we had more wealth collectively 40 years after slavery than we do right now. Because we were together. We owned more land at that time than we do now. And if you know, if you look at it, it's purely because, you know, what you just said. I mean, we were together. You know, we had no choice. If I didn't like you, I still had to work with you, because the alternative, I couldn't work with nobody else and keep my life at that time. You know, we had to stick together. So, I mean, I think understanding that and thinking about that, you know, when you think about as successful as we have, you know, the number of, you know, athletes and entertainers and people in business and whatnot, and to think that we still had a greater collective wealth at that time than we do right now is mind blowing. You know, but one of the bigger things that was more prevalent then, it wasn't just we trusted, we also saved. You know, we put away that money. We paid ourselves first. Nowadays, it's gone before we get it. And we've all been victim to it. I've made the mistake. I remember when I first got my first job and first started working, and I had my first big check coming in. Man, the check was gone before I got it. You know, I had some new rims that was going on my truck. I was going to the jewelry store and get me a new watch and a new chain, and you know, I was enjoying life.
That's right.
You know, and I literally had spent the check. I had already itemized it out. I knew I had X amount of $1,000 coming in. I'm saying, I'm buying these rims for my truck. I'm buying this watch. I'm buying this ring. I'm buying this necklace and this bracelet, and I'm taking this trip. And before I looked at it, I said, man, I don't have nothing left. But it wasn't until after all of it was gone that I realized there wasn't nothing left. So, but it was those habits, and getting back to the foundational principles of understanding how to properly build wealth. And at that time, us working together, the teaching was more valuable. It's ironic that if you look at the value of education and how it's consistently been devalued in our communities, generation after generation after generation. I'm pretty sure everybody can look at their family. My mama from a place called Pine Hill, Alabama.
I know where that is.
9 sisters and 3 brothers. My dad had 3 brothers and 3 sisters. Well, I'm sorry, 2 brothers and 3 sisters. And every single one went to college. Everyone except for one, or maybe on both sides, has a college degree. On both sides, I have a number of educators in my family. And I bet if we go back and just look at our family trees and look at the value, because coming out of slavery, what my grandparents didn't have the opportunity to have was access to education. So their value on education that they passed down to that next generation, my parents, it was education was at a premium. So they believed in that. And they passed it down, but we put a little less value on it. And the values become less and less for whatever reason, good, bad, or indifferent. And I feel like that's affected us and hurt us in ways that are incomprehensible. I think we can't measure, because what education does, it gives you patience, and it gives you, and it puts you in a situation where you have the ability to learn, and you look to learn as opposed to looking to try to always teach. See you next time.